So we all know the Corvette C8 is a relatively complex car. Like any other modern day car, it has tons and tons of computers and modules in the car to make it work. And they all communicate with each other to do whatever task that they're meant to do. So if you want to know where all your modules are and what they do and what they look like, I'm going to show you where they are right now. So, how many modules on the car are there? Well, short answer is a lot. I'm not going to give you a specific number because it depends on who you're talking to as to what they define as a module. If you want to talk about how many actual modules there are, I don't even know where to begin, 50, 60, 70, who knows. But there's tons of little boxes all over the car that they will refer to as a module, but they're really kind of, it wouldn't be a module in a conventional sense. Case in point, you have a rear license plate light module in the back of the car. It does do something, and they do call it a module, but you'd think it's kind of funny that the rear license plate lights actually need a module. So I've already taken apart the car pretty much all the way to show you exactly where everything is. I'm just not going to show you how to take it apart because I've got plenty of other videos that show you how to do just that. But I am going to show you where all these modules are. Now, this is not going to be a 100% complete and comprehensive list. There are going to be a lot of modules that I'm going to mention that I'm not actually going to show you where they are because they're relatively inconsequential. They don't really make a huge difference. But I will tell you where they are. Now, I may or may not leave a couple of them out here and there. If I do, let me know. Leave me a comment, let me know, and we'll add it on later on. But for the most part, this is going to be a fairly complete list on where everything is and what it does. Now also, please keep in mind, I'm going to show you all these modules in no particular order. I will put a list of the order that they show them in the description below, so that way you can get an idea as to where in the video you can look to and look for if you're looking for the location of a particular module. I'm not going to describe them incredibly in depth because most of them have names that pretty much describe exactly what they do, but I'll touch a little bit on each one of them. So, hi Ellie. So in no particular order, I'm going to be showing all these modules, basically what they do, where they are, and how they work. So I am going to show you all these modules, like I said, in no particular order, but if there happens to be a module right next to the one that I'm showing you, then I'll point it out, but I'll still stay true to that list that I'm going to put down below too. So the first one that I'm going to start with is right here actually on the battery. It's this tiny little black box right there. That is called the battery control module. That basically regulates or takes a look at how much voltage is going through the car and probably gives some sort of feedback as to things like possibly parasitic draw or what's taking power from the cars when it's off and things like that. Now, as long as you're up here, I did put another video up recently about how to remove the whole tub in the front of the car and how to get all this out. It's very, very simple, very, very easy. Comes out in probably about a minute or so, and there's really not much to it. So if you ever need to get up here, this is everything that's going to be exposed. Now keep in mind, this is a 3LT Z51 car, so I have some extra stuff that maybe not all cars have. Things like that little module down there, and the magnetic ride control over there, and so on and so forth. So as long as we're up here, like I said, there's your battery control module, and then we'll move on over here. Now, in the older days with older cars, this used to be referred to as the EBTCM, or the electronic braking and traction control module. Now it's pretty much just the braking control module. And the whole point of that thing is you got to remember, this thing does not have vacuum power brakes. It has electronic power brakes. So there's actually a little electronic motor inside there with pistons that apply braking force whenever you step on the pedal. So this thing does a variety of different things. It controls the brakes themselves, and I believe it also controls the parking brake in the back ultimately as well too. Be very careful with that whenever you're servicing the brakes because you can damage those if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know the proper procedures. And from what I hear, they are very hard to get and they are very expensive. As long as we're up here, we'll move down here to this. This little module down here is the front leveling and hydraulic lift control module. It's also called the power pack for it as well too. This is your motor and your actuator and your complete brain for your front lift system if you have it. If you follow that hose right up, it goes to the reservoir right there for the front lift system, and you'll see that there's two lines that come on off of it, one right there and one right behind it, and they go to the columns excuse me, the collars on each side in order to lift the front suspension of the car if you have front lift. So that's where that is. As long as we're up here, you've also got the headlamp control modules, one for each headlamp. One on the passenger side is right there. It's this silver piece right here. And you have another one on the driver's side too. And that is for, obviously, the driver's side headlight. These are just because you got to remember these are LED lights and they control their own modules, daytime running lamps, and things of that nature. So it's all going to be controlled by those things. There is a separate lighting module, which I'll show you momentarily in here in a little bit. As long as we're up here too, you've also got right here, I'm going to point with my screwdriver, that is the power steering control module. It's also the motor for the power steering. You can kind of see it down there a little bit too. So that is obviously going to be your just control module for your power steering. Remember, these cars have electric power steering. They don't have hydraulic power steering anymore. The electric power steering can provide more feedback and more control over the car, and that's how you get those different variations on how hard the motor is working as to when you have the car in track mode or sport mode or tour mode or comfort or whatever you want to call it, and the feel and the feedback on the actual steering itself. Alright, so next I'm going to move inside the car here where we have the radio module right here, basically right there. It's just obviously right in place where it is. And then directly underneath it you have this with all of these connectors right here. That's your body control module, controlling basically everything in the car's body control systems. So anything body related it's going to be doing. It's kind of a master brain to the whole car. Then if you look underneath it, behind it, you can kind of see tucked away, you have this right here. I'm pointing to it with the screwdriver. It is underneath and behind it. Let me see if I can get a better view of it over here. You have that module right there underneath the body control module. That is the CAN serial gateway control module, and it is exactly what the description says it is. It's your gateway into the CAN system, or the controlled area network. So anything that is CAN related, it's ultimately going to go through that computer right there. That is somewhat of a crude description, but it is the general basics of it. Below it, underneath, with the two bright yellow connectors, that is your restraint control module. Basically, your airbag control module and anything as far as your actuated seat belts and things like that. So basically anything connected to the safety or the SRS system or the airbags or whatever you want to call it is controlled by that. In case you ever come across anything that has a bright yellow connector like that, be very wary of it, because bright yellow connectors are sort of universal in order to identify anything that is airbag related. So if you ever see anything with a bright yellow connector, just be especially careful with it, because it can be connected to the airbag, and static electricity can set off an airbag, so just be careful while you're around it. So now moving on to the driver's side of the car, in the steering wheel you actually have a couple of control modules themselves. You have a horn module, you have a heated steering wheel control module, you have another airbag SRS, what they call module in there. It spins around with it. It's all the coil that spins with the wheel itself, and those are all just small little modules that they're all tucked into that steering wheel in there behind the airbag itself. The airbag, I believe, is also considered a module. But if you move down to the side over here, underneath the steering column, you have the steering column control module. Okay, so if you look at the two things right there that have the blue markings on it, those are your actuators. Okay, one goes tilt and telescoping steering wheel up and down, and the other one goes in and out. So those are your two actuators. Now you also have some modules over here. One is on the side, and it is right there. It's kind of hard to see right there. That's your tilt and telescoping module itself, but then there is also a steering column lock module on top of the column going towards the front of the car. Now, I'm not going to drop the column just to show you that, but trust me, it's there. But if you see it up there, that's what it is. Now, moving on over here on this other side too, you have a couple of modules right here too. If you take a look right there, there's actually two different modules. One of them is behind, and it's right, let me try to get a good picture for you, right there. I'm touching it with the screwdriver right now. It's that silver module behind that one right there, that in like the black casing that says LG on it. The LG one right here, that's your telematic communications module. Your telephone, your sound, your microphones, things like that. I believe it may or may not do OnStar. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it does, but don't quote me on that. Then behind that, you have the video processing module. Now, I'm assuming that one's going to go hand in hand with the PDR if you have it, or also a video processing module as far as anything that's going to be on the radio display screen itself too. So you do have two modules right there. Just be mindful of the fact that, well, they're both there, and that's, I'm pretty sure, what they both do. If I'm wrong, let me know, comment, and let me know, but don't just take a guess either. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that, but let me know by all means. Now, moving on to the passenger side of the car, underneath the floorboard in the front, you're going to find a couple more things. You may or may not have these depending on how your car is equipped. But if you do have it, then it's going to be there. So if you pull, I already have the glove box out just for ease, and I pulled the carpet back. You're going to have these two modules right here. Now, mind you, that's not how they sit normally. This plate right here actually folds up, and it goes and it sits up against in there, and it actually bolts in so that the smooth part of this plate underneath there, the smooth part, is going to be facing out. So these modules will not be visible if you just peel back your carpet. You won't see it. You have to take the two 10 millimeter bolts and the two 10 millimeter nuts out and unclip one of the wiring harnesses in order to get it out and fold it over to see. Now, the one on your left right here, the smaller one, that is going to be your PDR recorder and your PDR module. So the thing that is obviously connected to your PDR if you have it. Right next to it, that you can see it says Bose right on it. I'm sure you can figure out what that is. That's your audio amplifier. So the two of them are right there. Then if you look in underneath right here, right there, you see that green connector, and let me move this out of the way, hang on. Those connectors right there, the pink one, the gray one, the green one, the brown one, and then that black one, blue one on the bottom, or on the end, you have that gray box right there. That's going to be your lighting control module. Basically controls all the lights in the car. I'm sure it works hand in hand with the body control module and the headlight control modules to do different lighting functions and things like that. So that's what you have over here on this side of the car. Don't forget too, you also have the fuse box right there too for the inside of the car, and the other one, like I showed in my other video, the other fuse box is right there behind the seat. Now, one other module that's already out of the car is also the wireless charging control module, which is about right here. It's that little slot that you put your phone in, that everybody seems to hate so much and they find to be very inconvenient, but that is considered a module. And if you disconnect it without disconnecting the battery when you're taking anything apart, it will set a code, because it's going to set some sort of a CAN link code, and it's not going to see it, and it's going to freak out. So that's why, like I said before, everything in this car is very sensitive, very finicky. So be careful of what you're disconnecting. If you don't know what you're disconnecting, you could possibly set a code. The only other modules that are left are fairly obvious where they are as far as the inside of the car goes. Now, I do have some other modules. I'm going to put the lift in and put the car up in the air to show you where those are. But the other one is going to be your IP module or your instrument panel cluster module. That should go without saying. It's the IP cluster. It's right there. Pretty easy to figure out. And the other one is going to be the HVAC control modules, or the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning control module, which will be on your center stack right here. It is this thing right here. That's the module for it. It plugs in. It's got quite a few connectors to it, and that's what controls your heating and air conditioning. And again, it's a control module just like anything else. Okay, now here we are. I've got the car up in the air at this point, so I can show you the last remaining modules. The first one, I've already taken the cover off here, the main tunnel cover here, is this one. The famous E99 ECM. That's obviously the engine control module, controls the engine. Everybody, I think, knows about this thing. It's known for being uncrackable, at least so far, where I don't necessarily believe that the key to uncracking this thing necessarily lies inside the ECM itself. I think it relies obviously in the entire Global B network. because you have to get all the computers to cooperate with each other. This is an E99 ECM. This is the same, or at least some sort of the similar variant of the same ECM that's in the 2019 Corvette ZR1, which is crackable, ultimately. Excuse me. You have to send it in to HP tuners and have them bench flash it to get it to be cracked, so that way you can use it. But it ultimately is the same, I believe so. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a software engineer. I don't know really any of that stuff. But to the best of my knowledge and the best of my understandings, that is how it works. Now, on this car, this is a 2021, so the ECM is located in this tunnel right here where we have this plate normally that covers everything. So you have the tunnel right here that is going to cover all of that. Now, this only goes up on the 2020s, the 21s, and the 22s. On the 2023s, the ECM was moved ultimately to over here. Now, I don't have the bumper off the car because I'm not going to show you the ECM because that's not where it is. But on the 23s and ups, the ECM is behind the bumper right there. So the reason they did this, I believe, is for a couple of reasons. Number one, you do have the 2024s coming out, and you have the E-Ray coming out with that. So obviously they had to relocate the ECM from where the tunnel is in order for them to make room for where the batteries go. So that, I think, was their main reason, and just ease of production for them to do that on all cars across all lines. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on this was the whole idea of certain cars have certain problems, and certain cars seem to be more problematic than others. And I know everybody's going to have their take on this and what they think, but this is just my opinion. So, on the on all the Facebook groups and mid-engine forums and things like that, you hear about certain cars having certain problems. In my opinion, not based on facts, in my opinion, it seems to me like the 2023s seem to be the most problematic so far. I've kind of noticed that they've, again, in my opinion, have the most transmission issues, and they have that little glitch with the IP cluster where it does that weird little like double picture, and it's all scratchy and, you know, kind of looks all glitchy and everything. So I don't know if that's going to have anything to do with the fact that they relocated the ECM on the 2023s and up. Maybe somehow that changed something. Maybe more exposure to the heat right next to the exhaust. Who knows? It backfeeds. They had to rewire something. They had to obviously redo the wiring harness to do it, and maybe that somehow changed something. I don't know. It's just my guess. If you disagree with me, then I don't know. But if you have proof of otherwise, I'd love to know, because, again, just in my opinion, the 23 seem to be a little more problematic. Not to say that the earlier ones don't have problems, because they do, just like any other car. But the 23s just seem to be the glitchiest, in my opinion. Now, another module that I'm going to point out because it's easier to see from underneath the car, but I'm not going to take anything apart, but I am going to show you where it is the suspension control module. Now, this only applies if you have the FE2 or the FE4 suspension. So basically, if you have magnetic ride control, basically with and without the Z51 package, but if you have magnetic ride control, you're going to have this suspension control module. And it's in kind of a weird spot. So this is the passenger side lower control arm. You can kind of see working in from there. Now, if you go back behind the rear part of the passenger side control arm, look right up in here and try to get a good view of it for you here. You can kind of see, there it is a little bit right there, so I can get it to focus. See that black box with the white sticker on it? That is the suspension control module. That is the module that controls the magnetic ride control and anything else that is suspension related. So kind of a weird spot that they put it there. I'm sure they had a reason, but nonetheless, there it is. Okay, so now I got the car up in the air still. The driver's side rear wheel is off, and I've gone ahead and taken out some of the screws, and we're just going to go into that back and behind this wheel liner right here, pull this back right there to show you that computer right there, that little module. That is going to be the fuel pump power control module. That is going to be kind of like the equivalent of the FICM on the old cars, the fuel injection control module. Basically, it's a module that controls fuel pumps and injectors and things like that. I'm sure it speaks back and forth to the ECM as to how much fuel to give it, certain levels of voltages, supplying it to the pumps, and bring it all the way up to the engine, obviously. So that is your fuel pump power control module. That is exactly what GM calls it in their description. Now, that's not to be confused with the fuel pump and fuel level sensor module that they call it a module. It's actually inside the tank itself. So you've got them inside the tank. I'm sure it's the actual fuel pump itself, basically. They refer to it as a module because I'm sure it has some sort of extra capabilities, but don't confuse them. Don't confuse them. Obviously, it's inside the tank, and obviously I'm not going to drop the tank to show you that, but don't get that confused with that. That is the fuel control power module as opposed to the fuel pump module themselves that are actually in the tank. And here's the last one I'm going to show you. Now I'm on the passenger side of the car with the rear wheel off again. Same screws I took out. You just come in here, peel out the wheel liner a little bit, and you can see it right there. Right there, that is your transmission control module, or the TCM. Obviously the computer that controls the transmission of the car. Close proximity to the transmission itself, which is why they put it there. But yeah, that's where it is. Now, before I get a whole bunch of people to start to yell at me to say that I didn't include every single module, well, you're right, I didn't. I didn't show every single module in the entire car, but I showed you all the main ones and all the ones that you're probably going to come across by either doing repairs or doing modifications or doing whatever it is you're doing when you're taking stuff apart. Now, just to touch base on some of the stuff that I didn't include, was the fuel tank and pump modules that are inside the tanks. I mentioned those when I talked about the fuel control module that's behind the driver's side rear wheel. You also have a whole lot of modules that are incorporated into the rear bumper. For instance, you have the side obstacle control module. You have one on either side, both sides, left and right. You also have the rear license plate module. In the convertible models, if you have the FRO code, the hardtop convertible, if you ever look it up, it's a CM9. That is, you're going to have all sorts of modules for the convertible top as well too. Obviously, I can't show you where those are on this car. This car is a coupe, not a hardtop convertible, so I don't have them. That should go without saying. In the seats, there's also a bunch of modules incorporated into the seats themselves. For the heated seats, the adjustments, the moves back and forth, memory, and things like that. And you have them on both the driver's side and passenger side seat as well too. You also have all the things in the steering wheel that I mentioned, and you've also got a slew of antennas all over the places. There's a bunch of antennas. You've seen a couple of them probably in a few other videos. They're those little black rectangular little boxes. There's one underneath the front cup holder. There's actually one in the rear mounted right kind of above where the transmission is. It's just that's for the remote receiving signal. They actually call it the remote function actuator module. And you also have the parking assist control module behind the rear bumper as well too. So there's a whole bunch of other little things here and there that I left out, but I just want to show you the main ones. So I just want to give you a general overview of all the main ones and where they were, a brief idea of how they worked, and if you ever come across them and you're wondering, hey, what the heck is this thing? Well, that's what it is. Well, there you have it. A general overview of all the modules that are on this car. Like I said, I didn't cover every single one of them because if I did, I'd be here all day doing all kinds of disassembling and reassembling, but again, just to show you the main ones. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope this helps. Whatever it is you're doing, good luck.